Welcome back to The Driving Show. I am John Hammer, and coming up in a bit, we'll go over the latest news in the world of motorsports. Speaking of that, NASCAR is at Richmond International Speedway in Virginia this weekend. I guess technically Richmond International Raceway. Lots of folks make vacation plans to go to their favorite races. For some, it even becomes an annual event. You know, you pack up the family truckster and make a weekend out of it. But some of us want a little more action in our adventures, and that's where our next guest comes in. Troy Macias is a car guy who was inspired by his own wanderlust, and that's where I'll let you take over the story, Troy.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Well, the name of the business is Championship Touring, and I went to Germany in 2012 and fell in love with the country more than I ever dreamed. I've been a car enthusiast from as long as I can remember, and have been someone interested in driving cars, wrenching on cars my entire life. And so Germany, I was pushed into European cars several years ago and just fell in love with them more and more. And as I started to do better in my personal career, I was able to buy nicer cars. And so I created a trip for myself to go over for a birthday in 2012 to visit friends who had just moved over with the Air Force to Germany. I went over, did the normal checkbox, if you will, hit the Porsche Museum, Mercedes Museum, and we went to the Nurburgring.
Yeah.
That was the ticket, right? Let me go and see this. Like you, I'm sure, and many of your listeners, I had watched the Nurburgring on shows like Top Gear and different internet sites and other television shows focused on automotive industry. And so it was everything and more that I thought it would be. And that left me at the end of that 1 week trip saying, first of all, how can I do this again? Because this isn't going to be one trip. No. And secondly, honestly, how can I share this with others? Mm-hmm. How can I share this with the rest of the car industry? Because it feels like an unobtainable trip for many people. And I've had that conversation with a lot of customers. So to sum that up, essentially what I did was create a business to do just that. Yeah. How do you get to the Nürburgring? How do you go to the best car museums that Europe has to offer? And how do you do this in a seamless orientation? In other words, you don't have to worry about any of the details. The foreign country, the language, the currency difference, just getting around and what to do. I've solved that. So essentially it's a seamless bucket list type of trip, John.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely fantastic. Dare I say, Troy, it almost sounds too good to be true, but you really did pull this off, and that's why I thought it was so interesting. And I thought, look, if again, here's my litmus test for this radio show. If I think it's interesting, I figure that people listening to our radio show is going to think it's interesting because we're all the same people. We're car guys and gals. Forgive me, ladies. Please don't get mad at me. But that's why I wanted to have you on, because I'm loving the idea. And you've grown this to the point now where you've got a great collection of cars available. You've got some great locations to go to, and you really make it easy. Talk to me about some of the cars, because that's always the exciting part here on the driving show, is the actual driving.
Of course. So yes, I have partnered with fantastic companies in Germany that this is what they do. So rather than me going out, just so I'm clear about this, and purchasing all the cars, I didn't want to have those logistics, right? I didn't want to worry about how are we maintaining them, how are we insuring them, how are we making sure that they're top-notch. Rather than reinventing the wheel, I partnered with one of the best companies in Germany that's what they do.
Yeah.
And in that collection, I have over 100 high-performance cars at my disposal for our clients. Yeah. That alone is resonating to most car enthusiasts. Now let's talk about the cars, as you said, John. For example, I have a fleet of 4 991 GT3 RS Porsches.
Hi.
I have 4...
Right? For real. Yes. Come on. Yeah.
Yeah. Sign me up, right?
Yeah.
I have 4 non-RS 991 GT3s. Mm-hmm. So again, there's 8 high-end Porsches at the top of the food chain. We have a fleet of cars that I always like to talk about these that we can't drive in the U.S. We have the Renault Megane RS 265. I consider that one of the ultimate hot hatch cars. So very similar to a Volkswagen GTI for the American listeners.
Yep.
In the R format, the Golf R. This is a great 2-door hatchback car. with 265 horsepower. That's the reference there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a manual gearbox. It has racing tires installed from my partner, as well as a racing brake setup. But beyond that, the car is stock, and it is a blast to drive, John. It's so much fun.
I love light cars. I mean, I come from the world of BMWs, Mazdas, and Hondas. I mean, those are the impetus of what I've raced over my last 25 years. So I love small, lightweight cars with sticky tires and good brakes. Those, to me, that's a great track day combination.
Exactly, and we have 23 of those available.
Nice.
For obvious reason, for what you and I just explained. And I'll give you a great example of what I use that car for. So if a customer contacts us and says, hey, I want to go to the Nurburgring. It's on my bucket list. I've heard about you. Let's talk about laps on the Nurburgring. Okay. So we'll normally do, at a minimum, a 4-lap package. That gets the customer 4 laps on the ring. That's a lot for this ring. Remember, you have 77 turns on this track.
Yeah.
And it's, nearly 14 miles long.
Yeah.
This isn't a short track, right? So 4 laps is quite a bit. You take a break in between. You have a lot of fun. If it's a busy track, you're going to be somewhere in the 11, 12-minute range per lap.
Wow.
So if someone says, I'm ready to do this, I ask about their driving experience. I ask about their car history. The whole point of what I do is to help the customer enjoy their trip as much as possible. So if they tell me I drive a brand new BMW M4 at home, or I drive a 911, I'm going to help them in their first driving experience at the Nurburgring, because the last thing I want to do is put them in a car that's too much, overpowered, and they don't enjoy themselves when they're driving, or worst case scenario, they have an accident, which would be terrible.
Yeah, that really would be. Hey, if you guys are just tuning in, we've actually got my buddy Troy Macias on the phone, and Troy is the man behind Championship Touring, and what he does is puts together European tours. He takes you over to Germany and helps you get that fantasy of getting on track at the Nurburgring. It's in some amazing cars. And so, Troy, you're actually there right now in Germany. This is going to sound like such a touristy thing to say, but what's the weather like?
Well, the weather was really good on Friday when I got here. Yeah. It was amazing. Today, it's the weather shifted a bit. It's rainy, but this week it'll clear back up. But it's spring. It's spring in Germany, and they go through this a bit. But that doesn't stop the driving. It doesn't stop your time on the Nurburgring. They call it the green hell for a reason. Jackie Stewart, coined that name years ago. It's so green and lush there, but it does rain a lot, and it makes you a better driver because you have to drive through the conditions.
This is a public road, right? I mean, this is technically
correct.
This is open to the public. And that brought up another question I wanted to ask you earlier. Do the cars that are running there, if somebody comes there, do they have to have a street legal car, or can people run track prepped, not street legal cars out there?
That's a great question. So there are two different times, or two different available times, if you will, of driving on the Nurburgring. Mm-hmm. So you have what we call the industry track time, and then you have tourist driving. And there are German names for both of those, but we'll just leave them at that. The industry driving is where Michelin, Porsche, Nissan, they come out and they drive their cars on the track.
Yep.
But then you have the tourist driving, and that is where anybody with a road legal car can pay a fee and get on. So they have to stop at a toll booth and touch a card, and it'll let you raise the gate and head right in.
Wow.
So that's how it works.
Okay.
To answer your question, it has to be a road or street legal car.
It does. Okay. That's fair enough. That's good. I think it would be kind of weird to see if somebody brought out a full-on, an old GT class, old DTM car, something crazy like that, and here you are in your Renault, and you're getting your doors blown off. I mean, I'm still sure the amazing differences in closing speeds from all the different vehicles that are going to be out there on the track. You really have to pay attention. I mean, I'm sure you've learned that lesson, haven't you?
You absolutely do. Driving the Nurburgring, and this is a common phrase in that area of the country when you're here. It's not like driving Gran Turismo. It's very different.
Yeah.
But I will say, driving the game electronically gets you at least some familiarity with the turns themselves, what they look like and what they're called. But the major difference is the cars and traffic around you, because anyone can drive anything that's street legal. So to that point, you could have motorcycles, you can have a bus, somebody doing an interesting, funny gag with a bus or a van. You could have a race prepped street legal car. We have those in America too. We've all seen those.
Oh yeah.
And you could have a very high end Porsche or BMW on the track that they're out there every day after work. This is their focus, and their hobby is to learn how to drive their car better to hopefully race professionally, or at least in an amateur league, which they do quite a bit of in Europe. And the other two components to driving this track that's different, in my opinion, than anyone believes until they get here, you have the weather conditions and the elevation changes on this track.
Yeah.
Very different. On areas of the video game, you think that the track is flat and you come across it in real life, and all of a sudden there's camber on the track. It's literally shifting you to the left. And anyone that's raced on tracks like Sebring and Road Atlanta and Laguna Seca, I mean, we all know that, right?
Yep.
Tracks are very different. They're not flat.
No, definitely not. And the elevation makes things really fun in competition. But, boy, if you're just out there trying to have fun, that can definitely open your eyes quite largely, I would think.
It does. But we have a great team of instructors that have thousands of laps on this track. Again, one of my partners, and they provide instruction if the customers book that through us. It's an option, and then you're getting real world experience. Right seater with you on the track. You can actually schedule track time, track days. We do that as well at a various number of tracks in Europe. That's where you really can come if you're a track-focused person. It's not just, hey, I want to go drive some neat cars in Germany. We can do both.
So we can drive incredible cars on the Nurburgring. We can tour race shops. We can see I'm sure you've got a bunch of favorite restaurants and other touristy things to do when we're not hauling the mail on a racetrack as well. Okay, if somebody's listening right now, Troy, and they're like, man, I'm in. I got to try this out. I got to find out more. How do we find out about championship touring?
The easiest way is to go to our website, which is www.championshiptouring.com, and our phone number is 813-362-3838.
It's Troy Macias. He's in Germany right now, and you can join him on his next trip. That is exciting stuff, man. Troy, I appreciate your time, and thanks for putting this thing together. I know there are a whole lot of enthusiasts that have always had that dream. I know I'm one of them. I've never been there, and I'd love to go sometime, and you're definitely the way to do it. Thanks, man.
I appreciate it, John. Thanks for having me on.